Check and make sure it's working.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Yes, we're currently.
We're good?
Hold on.
Okay.
Recording. I do them the sign.
Yeah, I'll take care of that. So, there's Amy. So folks, before I call the meeting to order, we have a couple of sign-up sheets here if you want to speak on one of these two petitions. If you could, Jeff, start with you and pass them down the line. You'll sign up on there, then I'll go right down the list on who's speaking. Makes it easier for all of us that way, rather than just have people pop up randomly. Okay.
I called someone and just sit with them.
Well, we've got a quorum. I think she said the kid, there's your office. Oh, you'll be fine. You need to go.
It's constant.
So while those lists are circulating, I'd like to welcome everybody and call the meeting to order of the October the 19th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Board for Owen County. It's customary that we do the pledge at the beginning of our meeting, so if everyone would join with me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Suzanne, would you do one call, please?
Amy Casefair.
Here, present.
Bill Purcell.
Present.
Bob Curry.
Here.
Donna McIntyre. Here. Ernie Default. Kenneth Sebastian. Mike Swafford.
Here.
Norm Warner.
Here.
Robin Cooper. Here.
Our first order of business is approval of minutes. You have before you the minutes from the August 17th, 2021 meeting. Motion by Bill, was it? Second by Bob. All in favor? Aye. 7-0. And on to new business. First thing in new business is a petition for a rezone from agricultural to, that says residential, but it's multifamily, correct? Which is a division of residential. So, in the matter of rezoning requests in Owen County, on the agenda we have two tonight. These requests are typically termed as amendments to the zoning map or rezoning. In considering these requests, Indiana Code 36-7-4-603 requires that the Plan Commission and the legislative body, that being commissioners, to pay reasonable regard to the following factors: the comprehensive plan, current condition and character of the current structures and uses in each district, the most desirable use of each, use for which the land in each district is adapted, the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction, and responsible development and growth. Pursuant to Indiana Code 36-7-4604, before a Plan Commission certifies a proposal to the legislative body, the Plan Commission must hold a public hearing. The Plan Commission shall give notice of the hearing by publication under Indiana Code 5-3-1. This was, put in the paper 10 days before this meeting, correct?
Yes.
The notice must state the time and place of the hearing, which happened. And in the case of a proposal under 36-7-4-608, change zone maps, a geographic area that is subject to the zone map change, the notice does not require the identification of any real property by meets and bounds. Additionally, the following items are required in a notice: a description of the proposed change in the zone map, that was included. The place where a copy of the proposal is on file for examination before the hearing, and that would be the courthouse. That written objections to the proposals that are filed with the Secretary of the Commission, which is Suzanne, before the hearing will be considered, and we have, everyone on the board has received those letters. That the oral comments concerning the proposed will be heard, and that's why we're here. And that the hearing may continue from time to time as may be found necessary. The Plan Commission shall also provide for due notice to interested parties at least 10 days before the date of the hearing. The hearing must be held by the Plan Commission at the place stated in the notice, and it is, that's here. The file of the Plan Commission concerning proposals are public record and shall be kept available at the Commissioner's office for inspection by any interested person. We have also posted a sign out at the properties, both properties as requested, correct? Yep. Pursuant to Indiana Code 36-7-4-605, a proposal to change the zone maps may be certified with a favorable recommendation, an unfavorable recommendation, or no recommendation for the commissioners. That's our part in it. The legislative body shall consider the recommendation, if any, of the commission before acting on the proposal. Basically what that's saying is we're an advisory board. We can make a recommendation of yes, no, table, no recommendation at all. Then it passes to the commissioners and starts a clock of a 90-day time frame, at which point the commissioners have to hear it, and then they make the final decision. So any decision tonight is a suggestion by this commission based on what we've heard, just so everyone knows. Pursuant to Indiana Code 36-7-4-608, if the Board of Commissioners receives a proposal with a favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission, the Board of Commissioners will consider the proposal at the first meeting after the proposal is certified, or at a subsequent meeting within the 90-day period that I spoke about. The legislative body may adapt or reject the proposal. They're under no constraints on what we suggest. The legislative body shall give notice under Indiana Code 514.1.5-5 of its intentions to consider the proposal at that meeting. All paper and information has to hold to that 10-day period before the meeting, so that the same process is followed to go into the commissioners' meeting. If the Board of Commissioners receives a proposal with either an unfavorable recommendation or no recommendation from the Plan Commission, the Board of Commissioners will consider the proposal at the first regular meeting after the proposal is certified, or at the subsequent meeting within 90 days. The legislative body may adopt or reject the proposal. The legislative body shall give notice under Indiana Code 514.1.5-5 of its intentions to consider it at that time. Okay. The first new business after all that would be the rezone of the Timothy Wagner, number 2021-6. You guys would step to the table, state your names, and then proceed.
Tim Wagner.
Wagner.
My name is Richard Lorenz, and for the record, I'm here with Tim Wagner, who's the applicant for this rezoning. He is the owner and occupant, actually, of the listed address and all, which is an application to rezone the property from its current agricultural status to a residential classification based upon multifamily for RV use and all. In this particular petition, we have set out the required deed, site plan, list of adjacent landowners, the authorization of the owner, which is the gentleman I have here, and we paid the application fee. It's my understanding that we have set out all the appropriate notices, and the green cards are in the hands of the custodian here,
Yes.
along with the publication notice to the public and all. I would note for you tonight, I have also brought some updated maps that are a little easier to work with and all, if I may. The one I would start with you is the one that has the sort of white colors on it that shows the roadways and all. This is the method by which the layout would be done. You'll see in the lower corner that there is US State Road 231 at the bottom there. And in fact, the owner, Mr. Wagner's home is located right there adjacent to it and all. The proposed access will be a cut on the state road, and we have made application to the state for that particular permit at the present time. It is currently pending. The roadway will take you up and into the interior of that particular 51-acre tract of land, and you can see that the sites are located on there. Tim, how many are there right now so far?
On that, there's 16 on that.
16 lots and all. These would be available as site locations for RVs that would be coming to the property for temporary use only. There would be probably, Tim has talked about the idea of putting this onto a national service that advertises the availability of these, makes the contracts on the matter and makes all the payment arrangements and all, along with all the rules and requirements of that particular usage and all. In order for this to be sustained, of course, we have to have the water and sewer. Water is coming, of course, from Eastern Heights in this matter and is currently on the property. We have also a site map which we've given as a secondary matter, which shows the proposed locations for the septic system that will be located on there. The engineer in this particular matter is John Sprague, and he is designing the system for approval by the state as well. And Trevor Shepard is the soil scientist who made the elevations and the determination of where the septic systems would reside on this matter.
Can I?
Sure, please.
Actually, John Sprague is a civil engineer, and he's going to design the sites. And Trevor Shepard is the engineer that is designing the septic system, and he's state approved to do the septic systems. Just to clarify.
Okay. In this particular case, this will be on the interior of this 51 acres, so there's really a buffer around all the surrounding adjacent property owners and all. We have not heard from any of the property owners adjacent that there have been any concerns that they voiced, and I have not heard of any written responses in response to the application today. This particular zoning application is based upon the authority of the Owen County Zoning and Subdivision Control Ordinance, pages 16 and 17. Residential has 3 different categories, and the multifamily dwelling is item 3G, which provides that it would authorize recreational vehicle parks and any land used for the temporary parking of 2 or more recreational vehicles by campers, vacationers, or travelers. So it is well within the confines there. Basically, it's a pretty straightforward application for this use and all. And again, we have not heard of any comments or suggestions by adjacent landowners objecting to that particular use.
So, pardon me, questions. Each one, I'm very familiar with campsites, obviously. Each one of these sites will be approximately how big, how long of a unit will it contain? Will they be 30, 50 amp, 100 amp?
They'll all be set up for 50.
They'll all be set up for
And
50.
they'll all be full service, they'll all have water, septic, and electric.
Each one of them will have a drop.
Yes. My septic system will be right there in the center, and I'll run each side into the center. I talked to Dave Metler, I believe, at the state, who handles that.
Mhm.
And he said that I would have my parameters for my approval on my septic system by the end of the week.
So how long of units will each site contain?
Well, they should be 40 by 70 sides. So I'll have plenty of room to put whatever
Okay.
pulls in.
Your septic will stay on site, or will you be,
No, it'll be on site.
it will be on site?
Yeah.
Will your electricity be above ground or underground?
It'll be trenched from County Road over to the center. It's kind of like an eye drop there where that is. It'll be trenched over to there. I talked to RMC last week, and they're just waiting on me to give them a spot to put the green box.
So do you intend to have any type of like events on weekends or anything like that that would cause people to gather in large?
Well,
I mean, I'm just asking, like, do you see this continuing to grow? Are you
I would like for it to
looking for
grow.
shelter houses and that type of
I'd
thing?
like for it to grow, but right now, this is probably, I'm at the peak of what I can afford to do, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But yeah, when I get a base going, then yeah, I'll come back for approval for,
For additional sites?
yes.
Do you foresee any problems with entry and exit from 231?
No, that was something that, John Sprague, he's a civil engineer for Incense, and he's worked directly with NDOT, and they're out of Vincennes, and he said that he would be able to get that approved. So, now I have to change, because there is already an entrance there, and I have to pull the old entrance out, and I have to put a new one in. But, that's part of it.
Was there any talk of deceleration lanes or anything?
He said that I wouldn't have enough traffic for,
So this is.
If you build it,
This is the-
This is 231.
are we better?
Okay.
No, I don't know exactly. This is his driveway.
Right.
Do we benefit
This
from
is-
hotel motel
Where's
tax?
this at?
No.
Campers,
It's not in there yet.
Yes, you're the county line, I know that.
So going north on 231? I mean,
No, south.
south.
We're down by the Green County line.
yeah,
yeah,
I'm sorry, I should have read it a little bit.
Yeah, so this is the Green County line. Blackberry Road.
I'm right in between Freedom and Worthington there, so.
Right in between Freedom and
You know
Worthington.
where the country store is?
Yes, yes.
I'm about
Okay.
a mile and a half from, I'm just on, I border on Green,
Yeah, so you're right near the Green County Line Road.
yes.
Okay, I should know all that because I used to drive school buses all over there. So anyway, yeah, okay.
those houses are all that Williams, there used to be a town right there
That's-
called Williams.
Yeah.
That's Grandma and Grandpa's, this is Grandma and Grandpa's farm. That's where,
Gotcha.
used to be,
Pardon me?
remember where the flying team used to be?
Yep. Okay. I know exactly where you're at now.
You guys have anything else?
I think my client has done a good job of taking the appropriate authorities and getting the proper directions for all the things that he's done here. I believe that we have conformed to all requirements of the current zoning zone.
Where are my lists that we set through the crowd? Just want to see if there's anyone here that's going to speak on it.
I have a question.
Go ahead, board, feel free.
Because we are changing this to multifamily residential, are we giving them a license to build duplexes and things
No,
like that?
this is an RV one by reason of the application.
I'm looking at our application, it says residential multifamily.
That's because of the category that the
And
statute
it falls
calls,
into.
but it pronounces for the record. And you can, if you, in your recommendation, you can say recreational or vehicle use.
We already know all this.
That paragraph.
That's the same category as our other campgrounds that we're dealing with right now. That's why we just laugh, because we already been through all this.
You said you'd hear from your engineer on the septic win end of the week?
he'll get the parameters that he needs to build it off of the state by the end of the week.
Got you.
So he's the one that's gonna engineer it, and then I'll have an approved excavator to put it in, so. RNS excavating, do you know them?
Is that Ralph?
Huh?
Ralph's work?
That's KNS, is
Who?
right? KNS.
KNS is Ralph, okay.
So just because I don't know, what's going to draw people to this campground?
Well, it's beautiful.
I mean, is that it?
You know, I tell everybody I'm country. It's south facing hillside, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And when you get up to the top of the hill, it's beautiful. It's kind of off the river bottom, you know what I'm saying? What's gonna draw them is just the fact that they can get in the country.
Is there a lake or pond? I mean, I can't really
I've got
tell.
two, well,
There's
actually,
this one
on the
here,
new
but I
picture,
didn't know
you'll
if
see
you
that I
had
have
access to
two
that.
ponds there.
Yeah.
Now, my goal is, I guess we're getting into this, right? On the far left side of that, there's a heavy tree area.
Mhm.
Well, I need earth to build my road. So I'm gonna put a third pond in. And I'm gonna dig that down and put that third pond in, and then I'll use that dirt to build my road. And then but I need to really get my road in, so I know exactly where my sites are gonna be.
What's your plan for trash and trash removal? Do you have one?
Well, I don't really have one yet. I mean, I use Monster, so I'm sure that I'll go to them and have
Well,
them.
I didn't know if you were gonna have people remove it as they go, or how that was gonna work. And then the other times that we've had these kind of properties, security has come up every time, so I would like to hear any thoughts
The
on
good
this.
news is you have the homeowner living on the
Right,
property.
and that's a good thing.
And that makes a big difference right there and all. The other hopeful thing is that because of the national application process, there's a bit of vetting going on with the type of customers that'll be coming there type thing and all. And I think the third thing is that this ingress and egress from the public road will give even the other people coming through will have visibility to the main drag of everything that's going on. It's not really like it's hidden in any regard.
Will you have a camp store and stuff like that? It's going to be any kind of and is it going to be like a 4-season campground? Is it strictly summer?
Well, I would like to get that far with it.
Mhm.
Because, as you see on the name, I don't know if you've seen the name or not, it says Campgrounds and Vineyard.
Yep.
I've got about 800 vines planted right now. And my dream one day would be to extend that, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but it would be nice to have a, but I'll have to come back for all that.
I'm just asking. I mean, we stay at a campground here in Owen County, a seasonal campground. So
Yeah.
I'm just asking all these questions because I'm very familiar with.
Well, I went up to
this.
Quincy and,
Yeah.
you know, they've got a really nice facility right in the center of it. That everybody's, an event center, you know what I mean, for everybody to gather and do
Mhm.
activities and have bands on the weekends. And I would dream to get that good.
I don't know which one you were at, but there's 3 of them up there, so not sure.
I can't remember the name of them now.
Hometown?
There's Indian Oaks, it's not that one, it's one just before you get to it.
You're talking about
Hometown.
the
Yeah.
gas
But
station.
they've got I was up there and it was like Saturday afternoon maybe, and they had a band playing and everybody had their golf carts out, you know what I mean, and they were all, it was a community.
Yeah.
And that's what I would like to set up,
You've got another one up in the area the same way too, so.
but it's just gonna take me, you know, some time to get there.
Well, that's the reason I'm asking these questions, because there's a demand for this.
Right.
And, I mean, most of these campgrounds are full and overflowing and,
Well, the ones I talked to said they had like a 30
Mhm.
person waiting list.
They do.
Yeah.
They do, because I have an RV at one.
Yeah.
One other thing, are you gonna be open year round? Because if you are, you'll be the only one that is open year round.
Well, I don't know why not, because I'll put freeze plugs in for my water, you know, it's just a matter of getting it set up to where it can. But I don't know, is there limitations? Because I know like Sullivan shuts down in November,
Indian Oaks shuts down in September.
so is that a have to?
I don't believe it's part of the zoning regulations, it's more the
No, not
marketplace and
that,
the
it is.
seasonal characteristics of the area.
Yeah. There is some overnight, I mean, there is some that stays open that does have the water lines and stuff deep enough in the ground that they can stay open year round, and they do have some.
Well, I'll have it set up so it can be. It's just a matter of whether I have people who are.
Sure.
Anybody else on the board, questions? Seeing none, Yes, sir.
Just for pure procedural, and you may have already said it, and I missed it. but
Okay.
since you do have a large crowd here, was it clarified that if anyone else publicly wanted to speak either for or against?
I haven't asked yet.
Oh, okay.
There was no one on my list.
Yeah, there's nobody on this.
Because
So-
we could make a clear record.
All right, so there was no one that signed up to speak on this petition for or against. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on the petition? Seeing no one, I'd entertain a motion.
Interrupt you,
I'm sorry.
it's up, Ruth.
Go ahead.
Just to, whatever recommendation you're going to make, it looks like he's specifically asking for a recreational vehicle park. And I think Mr. Lindsay did that, so if you want it to be part of your motion, you're within your bounds to restrict that zone map to that specific change. And then also before you vote, just if you are satisfied that all 5 factors have been addressed, just to have a clear record on those.
And I can go.
I need
Go ahead.
to, no, I wanna clarify something with Jim as he made that recommendation. So recreational vehicles can be a lot of things. And so does that mean that park models are not, not park model RVs are not all considered recreational vehicles? So if you limit that language, does that limit the ability for him to have those in the
No,
camper?
what you're following is completely just the zoning code, which says recreational vehicle parks, and they can be used for land for any temporary parking of shore or recreational vehicles for campers, vacationers, and travelers. So that's just mirroring the language of
Okay.
what's allowed by that zoning.
I just wanted to make sure there was no limitations to that.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through these 5 processes again. We need to follow the comprehensive plan, and you've addressed that. Current condition and character of the structures and uses, there's not really any right now. Most desirable use of the land in which the district is adapted. There again, there's nothing there, but it sounds like you have your process in place. Conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. I can't say one way or the other on that. I can't imagine it's gonna hurt property value, but I'm not an assessor either, so.
Don't have anything to offer on that, this would be pure speculation on our part, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Bill, you're a real estate agent. You have any,
It's nice and it's centered in the middle of 51 acres, got a big buffer.
and then responsible development and growth, I think we've covered that. So I think all 5 criteria has been met. So now, if,
There is a definition for recreational vehicle in the zoning code. It is as follows. A recreational vehicle is defined as a vehicle primarily designed as temporary living quarters for recreation, camping, or travel, either with its own motor power or mounted on or towed by another powered vehicle.
so hearing Jim's suggestion as an amendment, do I hear a motion
I'll make the motion.
with the friendly amendment of recreational vehicles?
Recreational vehicles.
Do I hear a second? Okay, so we've got a motion, Mike Swafford second. All in favor of this petition, raise your hands.
Mr. President, then most likely after it's certified, we'll be looking at November 15 as the first available date to get this before the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations.
November the 15th, and then it'll go before the commissioners. Nothing's final until they give it the final. Okay?
Now, so now I can't start like a septic, I can't start anything else, right?
That would be building.
No, let's wait until you get the approval from the commissioners first.
I'll have we'll have our signed petition, the part from us by probably tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, but then that starts a 90-day clock,
Okay,
okay, for the commission.
thank you.
Yes.
Why did you write the 2021-6, the number on that?
Yeah, when we started, I did 2021-6. When I went through the new business.
Pass this to him so you can see who.
So is the red there? Is that right?
Okay. Our next piece of new business would be the rezone of the pathway group, number 2021-7, rezone from agricultural to residential. out on Texas Pike. That group would come forward, state your name for the record, and then proceed.
With the commission's permission, may I stand?
It's fine with me.
Okay. I'm gonna stand. Well, good evening, commission members. My name is Marcy King. I'm the executive director of the Owen County Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development. I've also grown up in Owen County since I was 10 months old, and it is a privilege to be able to serve my community in this capacity. This evening, I'd like to bring to your attention that the population of Owen County has been in decline since 2010. In 2000, the population of Owen County was 21,786 people. In 2020, the population had declined to 20,833. That is a negative growth rate of 0.13%, and that trend is continuing in Owen County. Now, there are multiple reasons for this decline. Aging population, pursuit of higher education, pursuit of work. But one of the main reasons for the decline in population is the lack of housing in Owen County. Now, my son and daughter-in-law were actually married in the spring, and they were looking for a place to live. They were living with me, and so we were looking around Owen County to find a place for them to live. And at that time, in May, there were only 8 listings for housing for them to look at. And of those 8 listings, they were unable to afford any of them. They are now living in Monroe County in an apartment, and they commute every day to Owen County to work. But they are not an isolated case. There are many people in Owen County who would like to live here, work here, and be close to family, but cannot. Now, my parents always told me, Marcy, you need to make a plan and work the plan. And if you know me very well, you know I say that quite often, okay? But it is good advice. And you know what? Owen County has been doing exactly just that in the last few years. In 2019, Owen County created the Quality of Place and Workforce Attraction Plan. This plan identified the many assets in Owen County, as well as opportunities and solutions to that. Within this plan on workforce attraction, it is suggested for expanding housing options and to incentivize the development of affordable housing. In 2020, Owen County continued with their economic development strategy plan. This plan went into more detail on how we can continue to grow Owen County. It talks about broadband, which we've been able to accomplish. In 2023, Owen County will have high-speed affordable internet to every citizen in Owen County, making Owen County the only county in the state of Indiana to provide that type of availability. Also in this plan, it talks about business retention and expansion. Owen County has continued to work very hard to retain their businesses, and as well as you can see with Boston and Cook, many expansions that we have in the county. Also with our downtown revitalization, we have our lampposts, our hanging plants, our beautiful sidewalks. We are working our plan, and we are accomplishing the plan that we have already set in place. But right here in the housing and development recommendations, it specifically identifies the Texas Pike area as a future planning area for housing development. Now, these plans are not my plans. These plans have been created by Owen County leadership and citizens. These plans have been scrutinized, reviewed, and approved by the county council and the county commissioners. And I think these plans show tremendous vision. These plans show that a community understands, my community understands, that in order for us to continue to thrive, we must grow. And if we do not grow, the only thing left will be decline. Now, we've been able to have these plans. We're working the plans, and tonight, I'd like for us to work on this last tab. So at this time, I'd like to introduce to you the Cook Group, and Mr. Bill Beggs will take it from here.
Good evening. Bill Beggs from Bloomington Law Firm, Bonder and Roberts, and to my immediate left is Ron Walker with Workforce Housing LLC, one of the co-applicants tonight. To his left is Brett Franklin with Pathway Group LLC, also one of the co-applicants and the group that owns the property that's the subject of your hearing tonight. here obviously for a reason. I don't have to tell anybody what we're doing here and why we're here. As I understand the process that we're in tonight, I just want to make sure we are all sort of clear on what we're doing here tonight. This is just the rezone. I would anticipate you may have or get or hear or even think about questions that would be appropriate and that would fit for the site plan phase or for the plat phase of a project. And as we read the ordinance and understand it, that's not where we are yet, because we don't even, the property's not zoned residential, but it is currently agricultural. The request to you is to make a recommendation to the commissioners for a rezone to residential. Mr. Walker is going to talk to you more about the details of the thoughts so far. We're in essentially broad brushes or general concepts here, general thoughts of ideas, because like I say, we're just at that part of the process. We're not to the fine details of a site plan submission and request for approval to you all, the Plan Commission. So with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Walker to talk to you a little bit more about some of the details that we know, at least so far. And then obviously Mr. Franklin's here as well to answer any questions you all have.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Is it okay if I stand off to the side a little bit?
That's fine. This makes project so we can get it on the recording, because there are folks watching at home on YouTube.
Will do, thank you. Ron Walker with Workforce LLC, which is a Cook Group-owned company created for the purpose of developing workforce housing in this region. And how did we come to this point tonight? A few factors really. One is this community has done great work in identifying the need for workforce housing and identifying an area or areas for workforce housing, and with a lot of supportive services around that. Two, we listened to our workforce inside the Cook Spencer facility and heard their desire and frustration for home buying. And we've surveyed them, we've talked to them. We know we have a good market within just our company alone for single-family ownership. And lastly, we started looking at this in Orange County, French Lake and West Baden a few years ago, where we have a large workforce and there has been almost zero new construction. And when you look at these local cases and you look at the national and regional kind of phenomenon going on, we know that homes have become unattainable for a fairly large portion of our population. I call it really the middle income workers. And that's what workforce housing is. We have a vision to help create by developing houses in areas that we both reside in and where our workers reside in. Spencer and Owen County is a big, big part of that. And we know that homes have outpaced the ability for many families to buy them. They're tough for builders to build. And we are in a position to, we believe, help our workers and help the communities we're in. And we need your help doing that. You've heard from Marcy, the population has been in decline. There's a projection that could continue. That threatens your community, and it also threatens our livelihood in this community as a place of employment. So what we want to do is develop primarily 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes with a 2-car garage. We've arrived at that because that's what the people we surveyed want. We don't want to densely group them together. Our plan, and its initial stages, is maybe 3 per acre, so about 1/3 of an acre lot. We want to make those available to people that are likely in the 40 to 65, could be a little higher than that, income range. That's a group that often has trouble qualifying for mortgages, so we've engaged the USDA and have begun talks with banks because they have programs that can help folks get into a home for low or no down payment with a low interest rate. We're not in this as a real estate investor. We want to develop the properties as they sell to these families. We take those proceeds and we put it right back into building the next several houses. This is not a profit-making venture for us. We hope it's a stabilizing venture for our workforce. We hope it's an attraction to the community. But that is what we hope to do. And we are attracted to this property because it was already identified by the community for housing. We believe it's very suitable. Our preliminary investigative work and due diligence is suggesting that it is suitable. And that's what brings us here this evening. And that is the Cook portion of the project, which is the majority of the project. So we can either go to you, Brett, or I'm happy to take questions on that part.
You want to go ahead and take questions on your part?
I don't know your format, so I just want to make sure I'm following.
No, that's fine. So, board, any questions?
Is this just for Cook's employees only? Can anybody buy into this, any resident?
Our plan at this point, because we have surveyed our staff and talked about this at length, is we want to make them available to Cook employees first. And I don't know if that means for a few months or a longer period. We want to market it to them first and make it available to them first. But the goal is also to get people to buy homes and live in Owen County. So we don't intend to make it only available to them, but if they get the first batch, then that's how it will work.
So in other words, all, however many sites you got here, every Cook employee buys one, and it wouldn't be available for the public, then, right?
Well, if every Cook employee buy, that would, I suppose that is a possibility. Then if we market it to them first and they qualify and buy, then yeah, the houses would all be sold.
Are you proposing this have an HOA,
What's that?
like a homeowners association, or are you proposing to have any type of homeowners association or anything like that?
We are not proposing an HOA. Matter of fact, we will not be the broker selling the properties. We will be working with USDA and banks so they can independently qualify. We will not be involved in the transaction other than marketing it to them first to get them to purchase that.
How do you plan to do the infrastructure?
So we're in the early stages, as Bill said. Right now, we're doing some utility survey work now. We've been in talks already with the Redevelopment Commission and others to begin to gauge that utility need. So we'll be looking at all that. But to be honest, we're likely going to need help to do that. To get sewer extension primarily is one of the main areas that we feel like will need assistance. You don't see workforce housing being constructed around really almost anywhere because it is difficult to do to keep the lot price low enough to get a home sold to someone in that price range. So we can do better by keeping the lot price lower and keeping the home price lower. And so we're going to look at all avenues for sewer, water, electric, and roads. Yep. We're going to look at all ways we can help. We can get help to fund, or what tools we can set up to get that financed over time. But we're still early in that process.
Texas Pike, and I drive it twice a day, every day. Asked several of the people that are here. I do have a concern about the width of Texas Pike and the entry on the 46. And although we're not at that point, I would just like to float, have you guys thought about that process and what that's going to look like? Who you're going to talk to? Is there anything in the works to try to fix that or make it better? And I know that involves a lot of different entities, possibly the town, definitely the county. And I had even thought maybe a walkway from the plant to there, since it's going to be your employees, because 46 is going to be an issue. That T there is congested now. Sunday I couldn't get out of there. There was something going on. I don't know what. So that's gonna be something that's got to be looked at down the road. I know you're not there yet, but it definitely, and I'm just bringing things up that have occurred to me, maybe a little chicken scratch sheet. The floodplain is another thing, and I hadn't talked to Mike yet. He used to be with the DNR. I know in front of the school where the ditch starts, we're very limited on what we can do in that area because it's a 100-year ditch.
She's popped up.
So, as it cuts through 46, it comes over to that property, so you might wanna check into that. Personally, I think we need a light there if we were gonna move forward with this, at least. Or maybe a cross lane into Hillside. If there's, I've been told that you guys have access to some of the property that goes over to Hillside, so I don't know if that's true or not, and maybe the guy with Pathways could speak to that.
It comes up to the edge, you know, the property to the south, the 3 acres that are there, which is not part of this project, does come to the edge of Hillside.
But you guys own that piece as well?
Yes,
And would that get you to Hillside possibly?
depends on the floodplain, you know, because
Right,
that's all,
right.
now when they change the floodplain map on that portion on the south, you know, that is now the floodplain, so that would be a DNR question.
Yeah, that's the property that.
But it's not
Property
the
right now.
property that we're here talking about right now.
And honestly, Hillside.
One acre of that's in the town, 2 acres of it's in the county.
Gotcha.
The 2 acres to the west is in the county.
And at 8 o'clock in the morning, I don't know, the Hillside makes it a lot better than 46.
And it's something that we had looked at and talked about years ago. We bought the property back in, I think, '99. So this is something that's gone through a lot of different thought processes.
And just so everyone knows, I spoke to Sam yesterday, Sam, about the impact to his services. Talked to Chris Lunsford about his services, just to get a feel for myself of what kind of impact we're talking. And I know this is really early in the process, but I have to get these things in my head so I understand where we're going. And Sam and I had a real impromptu conversation about this, same way with Chris Lunsford. I have not talked to the fire department yet. You have, and if you don't mind, what do they say?
Due to the fact that most of these people that work at Cook still already live here, it's really not an impactful issue. Plus, we're also getting a new fire engine, so that's gonna, and we have full-time people on staff now. So the fire response time has been cut by almost 2/3 last year. So it's not, as far as getting the fire rescue truck there, not a huge issue.
And I'm not trying to derail the situation, I'm just trying to cover my bases here, things that have come to me, to my attention.
You're thinking of all the right things.
Sam didn't, I mean, we would talk in maybe 1 or 2 cops. Don't know if those would be additional or realigned. There's still a question of whether this would end up in the city limits someday, correct?
Yes,
So then it would be the town
yes.
that would be involved in all that. So there's a lot of gray here that we're having to try to make a decision on based on things that may or may not happen, and that's tough. I will say, I think it's a good thing. We do need more housing. I've been told as much as 700 places. So I don't know what that situation is. That's the last number I got. Marcy, maybe you could speak to that. I heard 700 probably a year ago. Is that still close to how many houses were down or that we would need to meet today's needs?
It was like 682, I believe, is what I looked at today.
Oh, that was close.
So you were very close.
Okay. Anybody else on the board have anything? Okay.
So have you done any soil work there yet?
We have recently completed a phase 1. We're doing some additional boring samples now. You may have seen people on the property doing that. We are also studying the wetlands. We're doing extensive hydrology studies of it. So far, everything has been very favorable towards development. There's obviously areas on primarily the southern edge of the property, which would be below where we would construct any housing. So, and of course, we don't intend to impact the streams, or as you all know, there are streams on that site, impact them any more than is necessary simply to cross over them in a couple of areas, because we don't want to do that. And otherwise, it's all looking very favorable towards housing construction at this point. You know, one of the things that we like about this property is that we're not building houses in an area that's not connected to the fabric of the town. This is an area with a little bit of sidewalk, with integration with my path. We've got walkways to the plant, we've got walkways to the high school, you've got a walkway to the YMCA. You may not even have to cross 46 to do that. There may be an area to pathway on the southern end of our property that connects across. So you could integrate a family neighborhood into parts of your community that I think could have great benefits.
We're going to pave all the roads in this area, right? Not gravel?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. They've heard me ask this many times, because I live on one of those gravel roads, and I don't like it much.
No, we would of course want to make sure it met all the standards and regulations in the community first, but yeah, we.
I don't know if it's a regulation as much as it's a pet peeve of mine.
Okay.
But, you know, part of all of this is we're all neighbors here. We want the best for everybody. But there's also maintaining properties in a proper way. Whereas I wouldn't be ashamed to live next to it, or that it would reflect positively on the community, the folks that live there, and anyone that lives around things like this. So, you know, this is something else to pack with.
I know it's not.
62 acres is the total.
And goes clear to the highway. Includes the bottom part.
The three, no, it does not go to the highway. There's the little square right there, 3 acres.
But you own the other 3 acres.
Yes, I own the other 3 acres.
I don't know how.
Yeah, the total is 65, but only 62 is that what we're talking about. So when you see the pink area from the south going north there, that's the usable. I would guess, you know, there's probably 4 or 5 acres out of it there.
I was gonna say 56 is what.
And I don't know, you know, I'm just guessing, but that's probably pretty close right there. And all the preliminary platting for homes was all done above that area.
That's right.
And that wooded line there, is that a creek or close to it?
That runs north and south.
It runs north and south.
Yeah, that's what I call an intermittent stream. It's one of the ones we do not wish to impact other than crossing where necessary.
Because there's cross ground to the east on that all the way up.
Any concern of the Compton Dam being north of you, right north?
You know, I saw that question on social media, and that's a unique one, not one I'm familiar with. My only statement at this point is, I believe dams have a classification to them, and that it may have, when it was, assuming it was permitted by DNR, we may be able to look at that. If not, you know, that's on a neighbor's property. You could study and see the size of the dam and then understand what the classification is, and then we could look at it, whether or not any mitigation efforts are needed if there was a leak.
Yeah, look where Compton, yeah, it's lake.
Our normally does not go well unless they're more than 20 foot.
That's what I thought. And I don't know the size of that. Less than that?
I'd say it's more, but
Okay.
you know, people don't ask, don't tell, so
Gotcha.
I don't know whether it was built, whether they did it, got the permit or not, but the gentleman built it already.
Understand.
That would be another thing, and I don't know, that would probably be done at the courthouse, to look and see what was done when that was put in there. It's something else you need to put on your list, I would think, to check into.
Yeah.
Um,
Already did, actually, when I saw it on social media, we already started that process to learn a little bit more about it, but I didn't know that until today.
We had that problem with Great Brook in 08, on George Village Road, and that dam broke, and it just devastated everything around the road. It's a legitimate concern.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, we're spending a good amount of time looking at the hydrology and making sure we understand the build line, to make sure because we're not gonna build in an area that we can, and if we needed to, we could do a conservation easement on the edge of some properties if they were bordering that. But we intend to stay out of it.
Any talk of green space out there possibly as a way to mitigate what you're speaking of? I know that was in one of the letters we got. I think it's a great idea to try to maintain some green space. And it could help you with this water a little bit.
I would agree on both accounts, actually, and we've done some preliminary platting on this, just to understand the layout. It includes what might look like a housing parcel, but they're identified as a non-building parcel. Particularly on the southern edge, that tree line will be an area that's all green space. I consider it maybe passive type of green space, because it does serve a natural drainage basin. And there'll be one of these large ones along Texas Pike likely, and some others. And so they are areas we wouldn't develop on. They scatter green space throughout the neighborhood. They also allow the water to run where it needs to run. So that's part of the purpose of our hydrology studies, is to make sure we really identify those in their optimal locations.
If you have services, yes. If you have services coming in.
Yeah,
If you're trying to put in a septic, that will not work.
okay, that's,
We're discussing the density that you were speaking of, 3 per acre.
yeah.
Obviously, that has to be served by sewage, water. You're not gonna be drilling wells and putting in septics on 1/3 of an acre, so.
Sorry, I'm a country girl, so that just seems a lot of really, really close houses.
It's interesting because if you look nationally on housing development, they're often on smaller lots. And that's for the purposes of making the project work for developers. So a lot of them are on 0.2 to 0.25 acre. We're going bigger than what a lot of people will do now. So lawn mowing businesses might prosper for kids.
Board, anything else? Okay, before we go to, I do have a list of folks here. Did everyone receive the letters and has read through those and seen those comments? Jim, is there any need to read those letters out
I
loud?
don't have to read them out loud, but I would say for the minutes that get the number, and if you would list just by who they are, so there's complete clarity that there were the numbers that were filed, who they were filed by, and you've already certified as a board that all of you have read those, and are taking those into consideration.
All right, so do we need the name of the folk that sent the letter to? Okay, so we have a letter from Nancy Sparks. We have a letter from Julie Coffin. We have a letter from Vicki Morrison. A letter from Dan Palco. I hope I pronounced that correctly. That's all I had, Suzanne. Was there any others?
No, those are all right.
All right. And I have read through those, and a lot of the things I've talked about tonight were in those letters. And I'll tell you the same thing I tell, and I've not been on this board but like a year, or not even a year yet. But neighbors, good neighbors, are hard to come by and are to be cherished. And you can go a long way with the folks around you if we know what's going on and if you follow through with what you say you want to do. I mean, that's not too much to ask of anyone, I wouldn't think. So I'll just throw that out there as what I think. Before I take the people off of the list here, I do want to go through these 5 criteria again, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. number one, comprehensive plan. Now, what Marcy, is it Marcy? It is Marcy, yeah. What she presented is not in our comprehensive plan, it's in the redevelopment plan, correct?
Quality of place and workforce attraction plan, as well as economic development strategy plan.
Right.
However, housing development was mentioned in the last comprehensive plan.
Okay. So we're gonna follow the comprehensive plan as well as we can. Now, that is being rewritten as we speak. So it's very outdated, but we're following it for now because that's the one we have to go by. Current condition and character of the current structures and uses of this district. Obviously, if we're changing it from agricultural to residential, the use is going to change. The character is going to change if it's rezoned. Most desirable use of which the land in this district is adapted. That is pretty subjective depending on who you're talking to. But it's something we have to look at. The conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. There again, I'm no surveyor or no auditor or anything, but I can't imagine that houses of the quality they're speaking of would lower the property value for anyone. Now, that's Norm's opinion, not this board's opinion, and certainly not anybody connected with the county, other than myself. And then responsible development and growth, which is why we're having these conversations now, and filling them in on what we feel. And so that leads me into speaking to the folks that have put their name on the list. So, because we have the table full, folks, and I'll start with Jeff Sherfield, if you will.
Tim's.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Dr. because everyone wants to speak, if it would be okay and acceptable, would you please have this Susan just go through the procedures that the notice was sent out, so that won't distract.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I can't catch all with all that, can I? Okay, so, Suzanne.
Mhm.
This was put in the paper minimum 10 days before this meeting date.
Yes, it did.
All the information on where this meeting was gonna be held, what it was about, was all in that advertisement,
Yes.
correct? The sign was posted on the property with the petition numbers clearly visible and for the time frame that is specified by our ordinance.
Yes.
All adjacent property owners, and when I say adjacent property owners, that's people who are actually connected to the property. That question came up. You have to be touching the property to be adjacent property owner. Those were all notified by certified letter, and those letters
Yes.
either came back or
Yes.
okay.
We got a signed thing from each one of them.
Okay. And I'm missing one, Jim. Are we good? Okay. All right. So, yeah, if you would just stand, state your name, and then, there's not many names here. I won't limit you, but keep it moving along.
Okay, Jeff Sherfield, first of all, I don't know whether the county road considered it adjacent property or not, but my wife is the owner of the adjacent property across Texas Pipe. She never received any notification of any kind.
Jeff, can I speak to that?
Yes.
That was under Oberholzer, right?
Yeah, it would have been sent to
That-
whoever the actual,
Her name was on part of the deed.
Right, but it was sent to whoever the property owner's address is listed. So whoever that
Because I
was.
seen those listings and I thought
Yeah.
Oberholzer, that's her maiden
because
name, correct?
We can't know who each person, where each person lives, so
Yeah.
it's whoever the tax bill went to.
First of all, I understand the right of an individual to sell property, and quite honestly, before I die, I can see myself coming before this board at some point in time, because we're part of the property on the other side of Texas Pipe, so I do understand that. I did hear him say that, he would have to have help from the county to maybe complete this project. If I understand what I read in the paper, our county can't pay our own bills hardly right now, and we're in debt thousands and thousands of dollars. So I have a concern about that, because fortunately, I've lived long enough to be a retired person on a fixed income. So that affects me even more now than it did in my working years. So I have a concern about, we can't take care of our own county roads, we can't mow roadsides, And now we're gonna do a project like this where the county is gonna be expected to help. But I also speak for agriculture. You know, my whole life has been devoted to agriculture. Our population is 1.5% of the country in agriculture that's feeding this whole country, 1.5%. And according to the Modern Farmer, agriculture contributes nearly $1 trillion to our nation's economy. And you say, well, it's only 62 acres. Enough drops in a bucket quickly fills up the bucket. So between 1992 and 2012 alone, we lost 31 million acres of productive farm ground. 41% of those came from rural communities like we live in. I-69 alone, whether you approve of it or disapprove of it, took out nearly 5,000 acres of productive farm ground. The other thing I might say is, everyone should know that blacktop and concrete does not absorb water. We put concrete and blacktop all over, it doesn't affect maybe us, but the people downstream, they're gonna get flooded. How many floods have we had in Owen County over and above what we used to have years ago? That's because water has no place to go. It's covered in concrete and blacktop. Having lived on Texas Pike for over 25 years, it's been mentioned, you know, getting out on the highway can be a royal pain. So that's a concern of mine. The other thing that I would say is anybody that drives up Texas Pike and looks across the field in question, it's almost daily deer and turkey. And so, Mike, you've been in the DNR and involved in that, and so we have wildlife that fills that particular field. I would ask this group, what is the cost to our total community? Not just for cooks, not for just the workforce, but agriculture is a vital part of our county and our country. We keep taking land away, and our technology can only go so far. Things are gonna get a little tough. Cook, on the other hand, and I will give a positive, Cook has been very good in restoring a lot of historical sites. The Yoho store, the Tivoli, all that money that they have given to take care of those things. Maybe the next thing that Cook should consider is preserving agricultural lands.
Okay. Robert White?
I'm Robert White. I represent the town BZA. I used to serve on the county BZA. Some of you know me from meetings. I do applaud Cook coming in and looking at this venture. From working with local businesses all my life here, trying to find employees. It can be a struggle, especially right now. It is devastating. Every business is not hurting for people. One of the main reasons that I worked for Cook, people that are younger than me are living at home with the problem is, like Marcia said, with her children. You get married, you don't want to live in your parents' house with a spouse, you're having your own family. They're moving further away. Now I'm working with the Owen Valley Alumni Association, trying to reach out to members to tell them some of the things that we're trying to do. They're all out of county. 3 of my siblings live out of county. You know, housing is a priority that we all have to look at. And I get definitely the need to be conservative with agricultural land and stuff. But as where my grandfather had a farm, none of his grandkids farm. So those fields either get rented out or something. Farms are not staying within the families. So that's where they become attractive to housing developments. There are 4 sites in Owen County that are potential developments that could bring up to 500 homes to Owen County, which is a desperate need. It's needed for our schools, which have a declining population. So the less people attending the schools, the more cost comes to us. So the more people that live here, we have more revenue coming in taxes that help maintain those roads. So being able to bring in housing to attract people, whether it's people that are moving out of their parents' houses or out of an apartment into their own home for the first time, you know, that generates more tax revenue for the county that will benefit all of us.
Thank you. This next name I can't make out.
Is there a mic somebody assigned? No?
Third name on the list, folks. Whoever that is.
Oh, it's me.
That's you. How do you get Marcy King out of that?
I'm Mike, thank you. No.
I could make out the M.
Robert was interrupting. So I'm gonna take off the Marcy King Executive Director of the Chamber. I'm just talking as an individual who lives on Shepherd Patrick and in Owen County. Mr. Sherfield lets me take photo shoot pictures in his field, and Mrs. Dooling always gives me straw for my, so they're wonderful neighbors, and I completely appreciate what you said about taking care of our neighbors. But because of my care for my neighbors, and just in the new role that I do have with my job, I do see that if our population does not increase, then the budget problems that Owen County has, the money that we need to bring in falls as a heavier burden on the people who do live here. And with that population decreasing, and taxes increasing like we've seen, that's going to be passed on to that smaller population. Owen County has a very beautiful topography. And to be quite honest with you, the growth that Owen County can have is very limited in the Spencer area specifically because of the river, because of the hills that are beautiful. So we do have to identify those key areas where we can actually grow. Agriculture, of course, is extremely important to Owen County, and all you have to do is go down to the county fair to find that out every summer. And, but ultimately, I just want to see what's best for our community. And I know sometimes, even though we may not agree, we do need to find solutions to our problems. And housing definitely is one of the key areas that we're going to be focusing on with the comprehensive plan, and an area that I'd just like for you to continue to consider.
John Waller?
John Wallace.
Wallace.
My name is John Wallace, and I'm a property owner just north of where you guys want to live. My land doesn't touch their property, but I got a letter. So,
Yeah, you do, just that corner does. So, yeah, that's why.
maybe it does.
Yeah. So,
I didn't think it did. I guess I'm paying taxes on it. But I've listened to all your concerns, and most of the concerns that you guys voiced tonight, I have. I really don't want, I've lived on this farm since 1984, and I've lived on Texas Pike since 1964. I lived there when they built the lake, and we have abundance of wildlife, and I just don't really want to sit in my front porch and look at rooftops. So I understand that we need growth, but I don't really like it, and we will probably be moving. So that's all I got to say.
Did I add something to that?
You're not on the list, but I was getting ready to ask you if you had anything.
I 100% agree with Jeff and John. I've got Marcy beat though. I'm 64 years old. I've lived here since I was 2 days old. And I've lived on the corner of Texas Pike in 46 of my life. And, excuse me, I'm trying not to cry here. I'm like John, I don't want to look out of my front porch to see rooftops. I want to see the deer and the turkey and the bald eagles and the geese and all the wildlife that call that field home. And I understand the need for housing, but we don't need it on Texas Pike. We're a rural community, we're a rural neighborhood. We worked hard for our farms, to pay for our little farms, our little pieces of land. And if they want to, if Cook wants to buy it or build homes, take it out of here. Take it outside of town, take it outside of our rural community. That's why we live here, because we like our little rural community. We don't want to live in a big city. If we did, we'd live in Bloomington or Terre Haute or Indianapolis or someplace like that. But we want to keep our little town quaint and quiet, and we want to keep a home to our wildlife and to our farmers. And this means a lot to me and our neighbors, and I just think this whole thing needs to be rethought. And as far as Matt's Lake, Coffee's Lake, it's a beautiful spot up there. And pretty housing addition in front of it will totally destroy it. So, listen.
Nothing? Chris? Mike Sudol? Sudol? How do you pronounce it, sir? I don't want to mess it up.
Sudol.
Sudol? Mike Sudol?
I'm not a adjoining neighbor. I'm not even close to a long time Owen County person. I came here 12 years ago, and I'm an outsider. There's no doubt about it. And when I came here, I didn't give Spencer a second thought. I kind of drove through town and I said, well, too bad it's dead. And at least Bloomington's close by, Indianapolis is close by, and I'll be able to get what I want and do what I want over there. And that was all I thought about Spencer. And somehow or another, I got involved in thinking as I was going to retire, well, maybe I'll just buy a building and renovate it, turn it into apartments, because it seemed that, from what I understood, that there were these companies here that didn't have places for those people who worked at those places to actually live close by. So I wasn't old enough to really retire and quit, so I thought I'd do some work. Just happened that that first building was the Epitomis building across the street from Apple. And that building I bought, and it had been basically left alone since probably 1975 with respect to the upstairs apartments. So I gutted it, put in new everything, and turned it into some loft-style apartments. And that got me involved a little bit in Spencer, and I thought, well, maybe I should do a little bit more, or maybe I could do a little bit more. But while I was doing that renovation work, I started to meet some people in Spencer, and they started to tell me about what a great little town that Spencer used to be. What a place that was full of life and vibrant, and where I could go if I wanted to go shopping. What choices that I had, what I could do with the 5 and dime, which 5 and dime I could go to, where I could buy some clothes if I wanted to buy some clothes, and all the things that used to be in Spencer, alive and vibrant. And when I came here, it was a ghost town, and people had just kind of gotten used to the fact that since 1985 or 1987, when Walmart showed up, that there wasn't any reason and there wasn't any hope to bring Spencer back to life. Luckily, I'm not from Spencer. And I saw lots of places around the world when I traveled where I saw how communities that appeared to be dead came back to life, or communities that never existed at all, were completely born out of farm fields and nothing. And so I still didn't really think that I was going to play a meaningful role in Spencer or anything else, other than just meeting some really neat people who express a real passion about the way things used to be. And I thought to myself as I looked around, why not? This is a Norman Rockwell kind of town. It's a walkable community. You can get to the river, which a lot of times is a negative when you think about flooding, but if you can figure out how to harness that water in a useful way, it could turn into quite a wonderful asset from a recreational perspective and aesthetic part of the soul of the community. So I started to get more involved with that, and the next building that we bought was the Dragonfly Gallery building that my wife now runs. And still yet, as we were doing that, it wasn't clear to me that I wanted to be involved in the revitalization of Spencer. I did get involved with Spencer Main Street and started to meet some wonderful people that were part of the community. And they allowed me to kind of participate in their dreams and be part of something that was growing and not dying, and figuring out a way to be instrumental in that. And it was a conscious choice that my wife and I made. We could have stayed in the woods 4 miles north of town on a couple of 100 acres and just enjoyed our retirement and not lifted a thing to do anything else. But it just seemed like such a shame that this jewel, this sweet Owen County jewel, had just fallen into disarray. And I heard a parable from my days of youth that kind of said about the frog. And what I saw was that Spencer and a lot of people in Owen County had seen Spencer and they were the frog. And the parable is that if you are a frog and you jump into a pot of tepid water and it starts to boil, you won't get out of that. And you'll stay in that water until you're dead. And nothing will change. And that's just what happens sometimes. Change happens slowly. You don't really feel like you can do anything about it. I just came in here and hopped in the hot water and I got the fuck out, excuse the French. I said, I don't want to be in that kind of environment. And I started to really roll up my sleeve and say, how can I get more involved? Not just me, but how do I work with all these other people? You've heard, Marcy speak passionately about her life and their, and her role and taking an active role in wanting to see Spencer and Owen County be more than what it is right now. And I think that there's a way for us to figure out how we can balance this. It really stinks though when it's your neighbor and it's your yard and it's your view. I get it, I really do. But the only thing that I can ask for those folks who are having to deal with that in a very, very personal way is to figure out a way to get to the other side of it, to remember those days of yore when you could walk down around Spencer and do all these wonderful things and figure out those are just pieces of the puzzle. Who's going to do the walking down to those places now? Wouldn't it be nice if there were some new families that came here that didn't have to get in a car to create the traffic through town to go to work? They could actually walk across the street to get to work. Wow, what's wrong with that? Wow, they could walk across the street to go to school. Wouldn't that be nice? They could walk down the street and go shopping or go to the YMCA or get on my path and go through town and across the river and maybe eventually to McCormick's Creek. And wouldn't that be a cool place to live? And we're not trying to boil the ocean here. We got a pot in front of us, and we can do some meaningful things. And it's going to take sacrifice. Not everybody's going to be happy about it. But there's a company that's chosen through fortune for those folks that are in Owen County to not only put a factory at our doorstep, they decided to put 400, 500, 600, 800 jobs, even though they can't find a place for those workers to live. They're willing to do that. And my goodness, if it was my company and I was having that much difficulty finding workers, I might move my facility. Some people may want that.
They may want to see the big factory shut down so that they could have a better view. Well, at that point, when your property taxes go from $2 to $10 assessed value, you'll have a good view, but you're the only one that's going to be able to afford it, because everybody else is going to be leaving, and you're going to be left with the burden that's on the schools that will be closed, the towns that die. Marcy mentioned it. It's a declining thing. We've seen it all the time. Towns that die. We see it in Owen County. What's going to bring Patricksburg back to life? Maybe not. Okay? Maybe there's something else. But we can do something here about Spencer, our county seat, and be actively involved and make the decision that, yeah, this land that's right next to the highway, right across the street from the factory, right across the street from the school, right connected to the infrastructure that's needed to turn it into a housing development, might be a good location, because it's right contiguous to the town, to have a profile change from agricultural to thoughtful residential. So we could do one thing, we could do something else, and I know it's a hard thing to do. And I apologize for those folks that have that wonderful rural existence, and it's being threatened right now. I really do. I enjoy that rural existence. I understand it immensely. And so this is that hard part for all of us to figure out, is there a way for this to move forward in a rational way? Because I didn't come here to pay 3 times higher property taxes. I don't mind all the buildings that I've renovated around the town square and that my wife and I have chosen to put our life savings into. I don't mind that my property taxes have gone up. I don't want them to go up crazy. I don't want them to go up out of hand like everybody else. But I want to see a life back in this place, and I want to be part of it, and I want us to figure out a way to make this that Norman Rockwell place and have life in town. And this is part of it. Having people live here is part of it. So obviously I've used up my nickel. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. That was the last one on the list. So just to reiterate on what our role in this process is, and we are very early in the process. The only thing that we are actually doing tonight as an advisory board is giving a recommendation to the commissioners. Nothing changes tonight, one way or the other. Negative, positive, or nothing at all. It goes to the commissioners for final approval. All you folks, I would assume, will come to that meeting, and all we do is start a clock on a 90-day process for them to hear that. So just so everyone's clear on that. Yes, sir.
I wondered if I just make a couple quick comments and all. I'm sorry, I was on the other list and all, but you didn't have a chance to read on.
Oh, okay.
The
Sorry.
item I wanted to bring up is just the context in which this decision is being made. One thing is to realize that I think everyone is agreeing that we need housing. And of course, the problem is if you're going to bring housing on in any magnitude, economy of scale is important. Therefore, you have to look where you can put it with the kinds of infrastructure resources we already have, such as wastewater treatment, such as water, such as our broadband. All those things contribute to the availability of that spot to provide the resources necessary to develop for housing. So there's not an infinite area that you can put all kinds of housing in. I also want to update you that I went to the 2021 Indiana University Rural Initiatives and all, and they talked about housing at that time. Their forecast was that by 2030, Owen County needed 1,500 units. And that was before I think they've seen some of the things that happened recently. So I think it's very possible we would be talking about something here that could be as many as 1,500 to 1,800 units long. The second thing is Owen County is at a tipping point economically. We have got a severe problem with the budget. Everyone recognizes it. There needs to be things done by leadership in every regard. But the only way we realistically can get out of this hole, unfortunately, is to derive new sources of revenue. And the revenue is going to come from bringing people in and their incomes in, and from housing, which provides property tax valuations and assessments to the county hall. Those are the only way we're going to be able to have those generations and generations and decades of future revenues that will come in. Also, our population, our demographics are such that by 2030, we're going to see half of our population, if we don't do anything, half of it's going to be over 65, okay? We can't survive. I use the word survival. Owen County will not literally economically exist if we don't do some things about this matter. That is not to disparage anything about the concerns that have been voiced tonight. They need to be addressed, those concerns. But the problem is we need to have an attitude that we can fix these things together. It's not any one person's problem. It's the entire community's problem. And to work together, private, public, individuals, all of us, we need to do it. So that's the context in which this decision is being made. Farm ground, very important. I realize that I agree with a lot of the statistics he had. I will say that Owen County has 240,000 acres of farm ground and agricultural zoning at the present time. The current USDA statistics for Owen County show 75,000 of that is in crop ground and about another 30,000 in pasture land. Okay. We're not really hurting yet for farm ground. We can tolerate uses like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. Yes, sir.
There's a question that come to mind. Maybe you can answer, maybe you can't. One of them is, what percentage of the people working in Cook now live outside the county? Do you know a number?
Yeah. Question is what percentage of Cook's workers commute in, and it's roughly 50%. It's either upper 40s to 51.
And I think somewhere I heard a statistic that between you and Boston, I know that's a competitor, you're pulling people from 17 different counties.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know the exact number of counties.
But if we could get, not all of those people were going to move there, but if we could get some of those people there, we would get their local income tax that they're paying now, but it goes home with them whenever they go to wherever they live.
That's correct.
We would get their property tax, we would get those things. So that 17 county just blew my mind, because I mean, that's a pretty big swath of people that come in. Logistically, I don't know how you're gonna make that just available to Cook employees. Unless they'll be the first to know that house is coming on the market. I think if a Boston employee wanted to buy a house and you had it with a realtor and they refused to sell it, I think you'd probably get a lawsuit with that. But those are the things I'd say. We have a major problem. These people are coming into our community, they're working, and they're leaving, but they're taking their money with them whenever they go, because local income tax follows that. That's an issue.
Anything else from the commission? Okay. Seeing nothing, I would entertain a motion. I didn't hear you, Bob. What?
I don't get offset. I want to do because I'm a commissioner, so
I won't put one ahead because I don't think it's right that you don't want other people buying houses. That's just me personally. I think it should be, like he said, if Boston employees asked to build a house there, I don't agree with just having you guys as employees.
Can I speak?
Sure.
Yeah. What I did was respond to a question. I said, we're gonna market them to Cook employees first.
Yeah, I know what you said.
Yeah. And so it kind of depends on the take-up.
But then if we as a board approve and say, go to the next step, then we push anybody else that would have a chance to get that house, because you're not wanting to go that route as of right now. You're wanting to have just your employees. So and I don't think it's fair that we are expected to give you guys the okay, and then people that works at Boston Science can't build a house. That's just my opinion.
Well, we're not trying to deny anyone from having a chance to buy it. We want to market it to our employees.
Yeah, but you're gonna market first off to your
that's right.
employees, which is exactly what I'm saying.
We do intend to do
Yeah.
that.
I concur with her. That's the part about this whole thing that bothers me the most, is that we're only going to give first rights of refusal, basically, to the Cook employees, and with Owen County needing the amount of housing that we do, I feel like that's an unfair assessment of our need. I mean, to put a housing development essentially right in town, it's not in town, I get that, but close to town, that could fulfill the needs to many, and say that we're only going to market it to Cook's employees first and foremost, that is really my biggest.
It almost smells like a modern day company
Yeah.
Sorry. From someone who recently bought a house 5 years ago, I know that as they start going on this, the first couple houses that get tossed in towards the Cook people, they're gonna be like, oh, I need to get my ducks in order so that I can afford one of these, straighten up their credit or whatever. I don't think that these are just gonna get swallowed up by Cook employees. I think that several of them will get mixed throughout the whole county as people realize, oh, let's get our priorities together, our finances, pay off any credit cards or whatever. I think that this will easily be spread very evenly throughout. I don't think it's just gonna be 90% Cook employees that are in there.
I see what you're saying, Robert, but we have no guarantee of that. I mean, with what the goal in mind is, I mean, if we as a board, I just feel strongly that if we as a board would allow them to say we're only going to market this first off the bat to Cook-only employees, I think I personally feel like we've let down all of the other Owen County residents that might have that opportunity if we didn't allow that verbiage.
I think, well, Robin, really all we're deciding tonight is.
Yeah, I know.
That would come later.
Yeah, I mean, let's not get off the fact that we are strictly here to say, do we rezone this? Do we suggest that it be rezoned from agricultural to residential? That's actually a commissioner step that you're speaking of, and I hear you.
If I may, what you're saying is totally correct, so I'm not correcting what I'm saying. You actually have three choices. You're making a recommendation that a favorable recommendation, or two, an unfavorable recommendation, or three, a no recommendation. You also, of course, have the option, if you don't think there's enough information, to continue the hearing. But in any case, if you have all your information and you're comfortable with that, one of those three options are what would be presented to commissioners. You're in favor of it, you're not in favor of it, or you have no recommendation. Those are the three statutory recommendations that you can present to the Board of Commissioners.
So we can
Along
do
with
it
the
with recommendation.
Right. So, and Jim, I never make a motion because I was under the impression I'm not allowed to.
Now, you may make a motion, you're not forbidden as a president,
Okay.
It carries no more weight than any other
Right.
member. It would have to be seconded, and then there has to be
It's the same way at my house, I carry no extra weight. Just, so, here's my motion. Oh, you want to speak? Okay.
I promise.
Quickly.
So, let me ask that you guys, as I hear your concerns from me, that you think longer term and bigger picture. Okay? First of all, even if the market goes first to Cook, that doesn't mean that when those people decide to sell their house, that doesn't become available to anybody who wants to buy it. Okay? Longer term and bigger picture. Two is the message that you send by saying yes to something like this says that there is going to be opportunities for other builders and other locations to add housing. And oh, by the way, if Cook is willing to do this, maybe we should spend some time and energy to figure out how to build for others. Since Cook is only going to focus on Cook, there's going to be other development opportunities that may focus on some other folks first and foremost. So again, bigger picture, maybe there's a way to think about this that gets the ball rolling forward and going, and don't lose too much sleep over it's only going to Cook employees first. Because Cook is the one that's kind of leaning forward here and saying, well, yeah, I've got it 800, I'm not saying this on my behalf, I've got 800 people working here already. why wouldn't I want to offer it to my employees first? That sounds like a good business decision to keep them in the county, and that's the other part of the big picture that I've asked that you consider when you're looking at this case.
So hearing a motion from no one else, my motion is to recommend that we move this from agricultural to residential as a suggestion to the commission. And I will wait for a second.
I'll second.
Second by Bob. Everyone in favor? Raise your hand. 3, 4. Opposed? 1, and abstain. 1. So 4, 1, 1. Okay. Yep, hold on, we got public comment. All right, so on to the agenda, number 6, public comment. Would anyone like to speak on anything tonight?
Normally, just like to say one other thing. Back in the day, my dad was on the town board, I believe, when Cooks originally came in to Spencer, when Walmart came into Spencer. So I understand the growing pains and I understand what he went through. So this whole process, I do understand, and I know some of the grief he had to take over.
Any other public comment? Planning Commission comments?
During the last meeting we had, we voted for changes on the other, and I made the motion, and it seemed like forever before anyone seconded it. And then it seemed like forever whenever we got to a vote, before people voted, and then everyone voted 6-0. The amount of nasty email, nasty comments that I got is why people don't want to sit on this board. You know? You wouldn't believe the things that I was called for making that. And Bob said, why don't you make the motion? Well, I bit the bullet in one meeting. I didn't want to bite it the second time.
Anything else, board? Now I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much for coming, folks.